Although air and gasoline vapour will burn when mixed in proportions ranging between 8:1, which is considered to be rich, and 30:1, which is used in some lean burn automobile engines, complete combustion only occurs with an air-gasoline ratio of 14.7:1 by weight. This ratio is termed the stoichiometric or chemically correct ratio. At this ratio, all of the oxygen in the charge combines with all of the hydrogen and carbon during combustion. For the purposes of this lesson, we'll restrict our numerical definition of the chemically correct ratio to two significant figures. Thus, we'll specify 15:1 as the chemically correct ratio for air and gasoline. It's important to remember that the chemically correct mixture does not give the best results in a piston engine, because the temperature of combustion is so high at this ratio that power can be lost through detonation. In practice, particularly in a carburetor induction system, mixing of the air and fuel particles and their distribution is less than perfect. This results in some parts of the induction system having a richer mixture and others having a weaker mixture than the optimum strength. This variation in mixture strength may even exist between one cylinder and another adjacent to it, as is evident in this example of a simple automotive twin carburetor induction system, where the difference in the distance that the air-fuel stream has to travel between the carburetor and, say, the number 1 and number 2 cylinders will have a quantifiable effect on performance. Having a slightly rich mixture does not have much effect on power, since all of the oxygen is still consumed and the excess of fuel merely serves to slightly reduce the effective volumetric efficiency of the engine. In fact, the cooling effect of the evaporating fuel can to some extent be beneficial in cooling the charge temperature below the level where it might otherwise detonate. Running the engine on a weak mixture, however, rapidly reduces power, since some of the inspired oxygen is not being utilized. The power reduction thus suffered is much greater than that which results from a slight richness of mixture. It is, therefore, quite common to run aircraft engines which are fitted with carburetors, when maximum power rather than best fuel economy is the objective, at somewhat richer than the chemically correct mixture, for example about 12.5:1, to ensure that no cylinder is left running at severely reduced power from being unduly weak. A mixture which is weaker than the chemically correct ratio, besides burning at a lower temperature than that which would occur with the chemically correct ratio, also burns at a slower rate than the chemically correct ratio, because of the greater proportion of nitrogen in the cylinder. Power output thus decreases as the mixture is weakened, but because of the increase in efficiency which results from cooler burning, and the associated decreased occurrence of detonation, the fall in power is proportionally less than the decrease in fuel consumption. Thus, the specific fuel consumption decreases as the mixture strength is weakened below 15:1. For economical cruising at moderate power, air-fuel ratios of 18:1 may be used, an advance in the ignition timing being necessary to allow for the slower rate of combustion. The current number of modern aircraft with the facility to vary the ignition timing in flight is limited. However, following the recent introduction of electronic engine control, a rise in this number is likely. With extremely weak mixtures, the gases may still be burning when the exhaust valve opens, exposing the valve to high temperatures which may cause the valve to crack or distort. As the inlet valve opens, the heat of the exhaust gases remaining in the cylinder may still be so high that it could ignite the mixture in the induction system, and popping back occurs through the induction manifold. This slow burning also causes overheating, because a certain amount of the heat generated in combustion is not converted into work by expanding the gases in the cylinder as it should be. It therefore remains in the cylinder and has to be dissipated by the cooling system. The mixture requirement is ultimately dependent upon engine speed and power output. This diagram shows typical air-fuel mixture curves. Note that a rich mixture is required for starting and slow running, There are two reasons for this. The first reason concerns the fact that fuel will only burn when it's vaporized and is mixed with air. When first starting, the engine will be cold, and there is little heat to assist the vaporizing process. Therefore, only the lightest fractions of the fuel will vaporize. To make sure that there is sufficient fuel vapor in the cylinders to support combustion, a rich mixture is therefore required. The second reason concerns the valve timing. As we've already learnt, the exhaust valve timing is given a certain amount of lag, so that full advantage can be taken of the considerable inertia of the gases at normal engine speeds to obtain efficient scavenging of the burnt gases, and to give impetus to the incoming charge. However, as engine speed reduces, the gas velocity falls, and more of the burnt gases remain in the cylinder, whilst at still lower speeds, such as idling speed, there is the tendency for exhaust gases to be sucked back into the cylinder by the descending piston before the exhaust valve closes. The consequent dilution of the induction gases is such that, to maintain smooth running, a rich mixture is required. The cruise portion of the diagram shows that this is really the only time during which the pilot has any choice in what mixture to set. If time is no object, then during cruising flight, only moderate power is required from the engine. Thus, an economy cruise setting of approximately 17.4 to 1 can be used. Fuel consumption will decrease accordingly. On the other hand, if speed is of the essence, then a mixture setting which gives performance cruise power can be selected, say somewhere in the region of 14.4 to 1. The fuel consumption will of course rise, in some cases by as much as 20%. When higher power is required, for instance when climbing, the mixture is enriched to about 11 to 1. The extra fuel, in vaporizing, cools the mixture and reduces the tendency to detonate. When full power is selected for takeoff, the mixture must be enriched to about 10 to 1. Apart from the cooling effect, the excess fuel is wasted, for there is insufficient oxygen available for it to burn completely. The higher power results from a greater weight of charge induced in a given time, and not because of mixture enrichment. In practice, excess fuel vapor is not scavenged as vapor, because the oxygen is shed out to some extent, so that carbon monoxide is produced during combustion as well as carbon dioxide. With very rich mixtures, some of the carbon fails to combine with oxygen at all, and is exhausted as black smoke. Because the density of the air decreases with increase of altitude, as the aircraft altitude increases, the weight of air drawn into the cylinder decreases. For a given intake velocity, the pressure drop in the carburetor venturi will decrease as ambient density decreases. However, the fuel flow due to this pressure drop will not decrease by the same proportion, and so the mixture will become richer. If we are to operate the engine efficiently when flying at altitude, then it becomes imperative that we have some method of defining and regulating the mixture strength. We'll look at two methods which can be used to maintain the correct mixture control. The first method that we'll examine presumes some knowledge of the effects that mixture change will have on the engine. Bear in mind that as the mixture control is moved from fully rich to a weaker setting, the air-fuel ratio approaches the chemically correct value of approximately 15 to 1. At this ratio, all of the air and the fuel are consumed, and the heat released by combustion is at its maximum. More heat means more power. With a fixed-pitch propeller, the RPM will rise, and airspeed will increase as more power is produced. If the mixture is weakened even more, the RPM will drop. Pushing the mixture control back to where the chemically correct mixture was found will bring the engine speed back up, but this cannot be maintained without risking the generation of detonation. To prevent this happening, the mixture control should be moved to a slightly richer position, when the RPM will fall slightly. The second method utilizes the exhaust gas temperature gauge. The exhaust gas temperature system is powered by a thermocouple, which is fitted into the exhaust pipe of the hottest cylinder on the engine. The thermocouple produces a voltage which is directly proportional to its temperature. The voltage is indicated on a gauge which is calibrated to show exhaust gas temperature. If the mixture control is moved towards lean, the temperature will peak at the ratio of 15:1. It should be remembered that this ratio should not be used, as detonation can occur. The mixture control should then be moved from the peak exhaust gas temperature position towards rich, and the exhaust gas temperature will drop. The aircraft's flight manual will specify a temperature drop which will give the rich cruise setting. This concludes the lesson on mixture.